Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Dr. Teacher Mom. Today we will be focusing on how should I answer the AO4 exam questions. Let's begin. So as I said before, we will be focusing on the assessment objective AO4, which is to evaluate critically and support this with appropriate textual references. So we're going to be focusing on the text, we're going to evaluate the text, we're going to be looking at it critically and looking at the writer's language and the effects created. AO4 actually is testing your ability to evaluate text critically and support this with appropriate textual references. What this means is when you evaluate, you need to assess how much you agree with the statement. You also need to back up your ideas with evidence from the text. So the top tips to answer AO4 type questions are: you should use as much evidence from the text to support your viewpoint. So everything that you say, essentially, you need to justify it with evidence from your text. You also, most importantly, need to look at the question and give yourself time to look at what the question needs you to do. That means managing your time carefully on the rest of the section. If it's 10 marks for the question, don't go over 15 minutes. This question will sometimes require you to consider the whole passage, or it can require you to look at specific lines of the passage. Please be careful when you do this. If it's certain lines, your evidence should only be taken from the lines or from the whole passage, as the case may be. Sometimes the question will use the term evaluate, and as I said before, it means it wants you to explore how the writer has made you feel, a personal response. Focusing on the author's intention will help you to answer this question. So we're looking at what is the writer's purpose for using specific language choices. How successful has the writer been in doing what they set out to do? The best answers have a clear viewpoint from the candidate. So you need to really give your personal response clearly and ensure that you substantiate whatever you say with evidence from the text. So let's look at an AO4 question. In the extract, the writer encourages the reader to feel sympathy for the soldiers. To what extent do you agree with this view? I would like you to look at the bullet points. They normally give you some bullet points which will help you to answer this question. So you should write about your own impressions of life in a trench and how the writer has created these impressions. You must refer to the text to support your answer. So you need to talk about your own opinion of the text and the methods the writer has used to make you feel like this. So it's really decoding the language choices in the methods. How has the writer structured this extract in order to make you feel sympathy? So let's look at this extract. So we're going to read the extract, and the key question we're looking at is, what are your first impressions? So as I go through, you should be thinking about that question throughout. So in the extract below, taken from chapter 3, Orwell describes the hardships faced in the trenches. Read the extract below and complete the tasks which follow. Meanwhile, firewood, always firewood. Throughout that period, there is probably no entry in my diary that does not mention firewood, or rather the lack of it. We were between 2,000 and 3,000 feet above sea level. It was midwinter and the cold was unspeakable. The temperature was not exceptionally low. On many nights it did not even freeze, and the wintry sun often shone for an hour in the middle of the day. But even if it was not really cold, I assure you that it seemed so. Sometimes there were shrieking winds that tore your cap off and twisted your hair in all directions. Sometimes there were mists that poured into the trench like a liquid and seemed to penetrate your bones. Frequently it rained, and even a quarter of an hour's rain was enough to make conditions intolerable. The thin skin of earth over the limestone turned promptly into a slippery grease, and as you were always walking on a slope, it was impossible to keep your footing. On dark nights, I have often fallen half a dozen times in 20 yards, and this was dangerous, because it meant that the lock of one's rifle became jammed with mud. For days together, clothes, boots, blankets, and rifles were more or less coated with mud. I had brought as many thick clothes as I could carry, but many of the men were terribly underclad. For the whole garrison, about 100 men, there were only 12 great coats, which had to be handed from century to century, and most of the men had only one blanket. One icy night, I made a list in my diary of the clothes I was wearing. It is of some interest as showing the amount of clothes the human body can carry. I was wearing a thick vest and pants, a flannel shirt, 2 pullovers, a woolen jacket, a pigskin jacket, corduroy breeches, puttees, thick socks, boots, a stout trench coat, a muffler, lined leather gloves, and a woolen cap. Nevertheless, I was shivering like a jelly. But I admit I am unusually sensitive to cold. Firewood was the one thing that really mattered. The point about the firewood was that there was practically no firewood to be had. Our miserable mountain had not even at its best much vegetation, and for months it had been ranged over by freezing militiamen, with the result that everything thicker than one's finger had long since been hunted. Okay, so I'm giving you some sentence starts that you can that will help you when you start to really analyze or evaluate the writer's language. So you could say the writer embraces the idea of, or the writer acknowledges that, the writer recognizes, the writer makes the case that, the writer propounds the idea that, the writer exaggerates, the writer takes a radical standpoint on, the writer dismisses, or the writer explores several ideas. So it's like really giving you varied vocabulary, varied sentence starts to make your writing show a variety. Or when we look at the reader now, we could say the reader may consider the view that, the reader may argue that, the reader may interpret, it seems to be the case that, instantly tells the reader that, seems to be a reinforcement of, is used to introduce the idea of, or simultaneously acknowledges. So it's really giving you, as I said, a range of vocabulary choices that will make your writing richer. So I would like you to use these sentence starts to help you. So let's go back to the question. It said in the extract, the writer encourages the reader to feel sympathy for the soldiers. To what extent do you agree with this view? And let's look at the teacher model. You know, I always like to give you an exemplar response to help you, so you have that to look at. I do not expect you to copy it. I expect you to use it as a model to help you, so you see what is expected, and then you go ahead and write your own response. So it's just the opening paragraph, and let's have a look. Orwell encourages the reader to feel sympathy for the soldiers in the trenches. He says the temperature was exceptionally low. The phrase exceptionally low exaggerates the idea of the harshness of the weather. So I've given a clear point that the writer is creating sympathy for the soldiers. So the reader is going to feel sympathetic because of the harshness of the weather. He repeats the idea of firewood to show that to them firewood represented warmth. However, the absence of firewood really revealed the state of these soldiers. So they were devoid of warmth in this really harsh conditions. So let's go back to the teacher model. So the phrase exceptionally low exaggerates the idea of the harshness of the weather. In addition, he says, I was shivering like a jelly. The verb shivering, so I've started to really embed the quotes instead of just taking it as a whole. I've looked at my quote, my longer quotation, I was shivering like a jelly, and then zoomed into the verb shivering, because that really creates an image of the state of this soldier in the trenches. So the verb shivering suggests that they are dangerously cold and the conditions are very extreme. In addition, the noun phrase wintry sun is used as a juxtaposition to again underline the severity of the conditions and create a sympathetic tone for the reader, because that contrast, we don't expect the sun to be wintry. Winter and summer are opposite. Sun is synonymous with summer, and winter is not synonymous with summer. It's synonymous with the cold. So that juxtaposition further underlines the severity of these weather conditions. Now I would like you to have a go at completing your paragraph, going back to the extract, looking at any other words that you think would encourage the reader to feel sympathy for the soldiers. Remember, as I said, it's an evaluation, so you have to give your personal response to the text. You have to give your opinions of what you think the writer is trying to communicate. When you have done that, I would like you to choose a number. Well, I'm going to choose a number. I'm going to choose 7 today. And it says, in today's work, I am most proud of because. So I really need you to reflect on how well you have done. And for this tutorial to be have an impact on your work or help you, you have to do the practical side of it. So you have to sit, time yourself. I said no more than 15 minutes. So give yourself maximum 15 minutes. Sit down, look at my model again, look at the extract, write your response. And after writing your response, I would like you to reflect on your work. What are you most proud of? Have you embedded your quotes? Have you given a range of different quotes? Like in the first paragraph, I'm expecting you to choose at least 3 quotations and explore the effect on the reader. So as always, I'm happy that you took the time out to join me for yet another tutorial. I hope this tutorial has been a help to you on how to really tackle your assessment objective AO4 and looking at what you need to do or what you need to do better. So that bit of it, which is the challenge part of it, what do you need to do better? As always, if you have any comments, any ideas, or anything that you're struggling with that you would like me to address in my next tutorial, please be sure to leave your comments below. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to click that subscribe button and subscribe, like, share. That will be most appreciated. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.